Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Matos, and I'm a counselor for the two Better Choice programs in the state of Connecticut, and those are gambling treatment programs. One is the Connection, and one is MCCA, and I'm a peer counselor, and I'm also a certified, internationally certified gambling counselor. And part of my job is I help people with gambling addiction and their family members. And a big part of my job also is I do a lot of outreach and public speaking and trainings on problem gambling. So that's a great question. So certainly, prior to, I've been doing this job for about 6 years. Prior to this, I worked for the state of Connecticut for 37 years. But prior to that, I'm a person in long-term recovery. So what that means for me is I've been clean and sober for over 32 years, and I haven't gambled in almost the same amount of time, 31 plus years. So I have long-term recovery from addiction and gambling, and a gambling addiction, and that's why we're here. Another part of my story is actually being a person affected from problem gambling, growing up with gambling in my family. My dad was a gambler. That's what he did for a living. He was a bookmaker, card shark, horse player. So I remember gambling as far back as I can remember. I didn't really understand a lot of it early on, but fast forward to your question today, when I retired from the state of Connecticut, I had an opportunity to work in the field of problem gambling, and I thought, what better way to put my recovery to use? Because one thing I do see that in my years attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, I see that there's not a lot of long-term recovery. People struggle with gambling addiction, and what better way to put my recovery to work than helping others, navigate that. So my own struggle was certainly being a person affected. My father was a gambler. It affected my life, negatively impacted my life and my family's life, my mom and my younger sister in many ways. And through my teens, I developed, I started using alcohol. But one thing I said I never would do would be to gamble. I knew what gambling did to my family. I didn't like it. And then I was experimenting with drugs and alcohol, but nothing substantial. And then I graduated high school, and I wound up getting a good job with the state of Connecticut. And so, with my dad, I was exposed to gambling by my dad. Again, my father, being a gambler, he would borrow money from me a lot of times because I had a good job with the state of Connecticut. And if he wasn't doing well, he would borrow money from me. And so one day he called me up at work and said, he used to go to OTB, and he had me come. He wanted me to meet him down there one day, and he said he had a horse I might be able to make a lot of money on if I had some money and I could bet it. So I went down there, and and I never really gambled before. And he said, "How much money do you have?" And I said, "I have $10." And I gave him the $10, and this was like 1977. And that $10 he got me $2,000 in a bet. It was my first really bet ever. And so that was like that really had a big impact on me, at a young age. Had a big win. It was a lot of money back then. It's a lot of money today. It was a significant amount of money back then. So that's kind of what set the hook in problem gambling in my life, something I never said I would do. Certainly I reaped a huge benefit that day, and, I wanted to know more about it. So I started going down there more and more, hanging out with my dad after work and at lunchtime and while I was working, and started playing the horses every day, and just consumed my life for a number of years along with, and with the gambling increase, my substance abuse increased too, with kind of the co-occurring piece that we see with a lot of problem gamblers, and certainly in my case, alcohol, drug use, and gambling kind of all went together in my life. So if I won a lot of money, I would party more, and it was just a vicious cycle. So till it came to an end, and hopefully it ended when I was 29 years old. So I hit bottom with, drugs and alcohol, and shortly thereafter, gambling. Even after I stopped using substances and alcohol, my life was getting better. I was still gambling every day, and the gambling almost took me back to using again. So I had to get help for my gambling a short time later. So, so here I am, over 30 years later. Life has been great without gambling. At one time in my life, I thought I couldn't get by without gambling. I thought I had to win money to pay my bills or to buy anything I needed, because that's kind of the way my father lived his life, and that's what I learned. But everything I tried to get by gambling, I now have today by not gambling, and I have a wonderful life. Today as a result of not gambling and using drugs and alcohol. And now it's even better now that I'm able to in my retirement to work in gambling, treatment and recovery, and kind of it's really fulfilling, especially even for my own recovery in many ways, because it's taken me to a whole nother level of my recovery doing this kind of work. So it really has been. I'm very grateful for it. You know, as I said, I hit my bottom with drugs and alcohol. I went and got help for it. I was going to my groups every night, my meetings every night for 9 or 10 months, and you know, things were getting better in my life. But the one thing that wasn't getting better in my life was my financial situation. Even though I wasn't using drugs and alcohol, I still didn't have any money. I was gambling every day. I was going to meetings every night and OTB every day, off-track betting. And, you know, I was lying about where I was to my girlfriend. I was lying about where the money was going. I was borrowing money. I was broke all the time. And I was supposed to go on vacation with a bunch of friends from my recovery program. And the day before I was supposed to go, I lost all my vacation money at the track. So I had to kind of like tell one of my friends why I couldn't go, you know, and I had to tell him the truth why. And it's like I can't go. I lost all my money. So he goes, all right. He goes, well, I'll lend you the money. He goes, but under one condition, you got to go to Gamblers Anonymous when you get back, right? So, you know, that's what I did. You know, I went away on that vacation with a bunch of my friends, and I came back, and he took me to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I was ready. I think, and part of my recovery was it almost took me back to using drugs and alcohol again, my gambling. You know, it was causing a lot of problems in my life, and the way I used to know how to cope with things was to use drugs and alcohol. And so that's where it was taking me back, you know, my financial problems and my relationship problems. So thank God I was able to, through the other rooms of recovery, led me to Gamblers Anonymous. So, you know, I work at a program. We have many types of gamblers. You know, we have horse players. You know, we have people that are day traders, fantasy sports, sports bettors, lottery tickets, scratch tickets. So it's kind of different for everybody. You know, different interventions for different types of gambling. You know, whether they're younger or they're older, depending, you know, where they're at in life. And a lot of times they have, like I said, either co-occurring substance abuse problem too, in many cases, or mental health diagnosis. So there's no really cookie cutter treatment. There's a lot of same interventions we use, but it's individualized for the person. Usually we do have support groups. We work, like as I mentioned, we work with family members of gamblers. We often see the family members are severely impacted from gambling. A lot of, you know, trauma they suffer from all the lies, deceit, and the financial devastation related to the gambling. So we do have family support groups, and so we have help for them. So we urge them to get into counseling too, because it also helps them, but certainly when they get in counseling too, it has a significant impact on the gambler too. We have better success rates when the family members are involved. So there's, you know, if they're casino gamblers, you know, with the casino expansion, you know, we have voluntary self-exclusion. We can help them with that. You know, at the casinos, it's a self-exclusion form is where, you know, they're basically self-excluded from the casino, and if they do go on the property, they can't be arrested for trespassing or escorted off and things like that. We have inpatient for gambling treatment if somebody's significantly, you know, they just need a respite from gambling. We have a program in Danbury, McDonough House, and they can go there for 7 to 10 days and just kind of, you know, they're in there with the substance abuse population, but they do get gambling specific treatment there. I'll visit them there. We have trained gambling counselors there. And the one good thing about the state of Connecticut, we do have some of the best gambling treatment in the country. There's no out-of-pocket expense for gambling treatment in Connecticut. We have a grant, and you know, and the grant is about $2.3 million, and the grant is from the Connecticut Lottery, and it's mandated by the legislature for the Chronic Gamblers Treatment Fund. And so whatever their insurance pays, that's all the person has to pay. If there's any co-pays or anything like that, the grant covers the co-pay. So there's no out-of-pocket expense for gambling treatment in Connecticut. And the inpatient treatment is the same way. So there's no out-of-pocket for inpatient treatment. So we do a lot of free trainings. So a lot of stuff we do is covered by that grant, which is a great grant. So we have some other smaller grants too, gambling specific. So I just want to put that out there as far as, you know, getting help in Connecticut. Sure, and that's another great question. So one of the things, you know, we do a lot of outreach and education for problem gambling, and you know, gambling addiction has a lot of similarities to drug and alcohol use. Even though someone's not taking in a substance, you know, when a person's gambling, it has the same impact on the brain. The same things go on in the brain Same changes. There's a lot of similarities, and there's some significant differences too. Like it's the hidden addiction. It can go undetected for many years. People might not even know that someone's gambling. It could be going on right under their nose. So when a loved one does find out, you can just imagine, the sense of, the devastation and the betrayal and all the lies that went with that. So it impacts the family severely. So there's a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, and it's really, once someone crosses that line into uncontrolled gambling, it's the same as drinking. It's like you can't go back to controlled gambling. It's an addiction like any other addiction. So and we do a lot of outreach and training, with that. We've done a lot in the past few years, educating different, whether it's DCF social workers, clinicians, just the general public, recovery population, family members. So there's a lot more awareness out there today. So we kind of give them the facts. We have handouts to back up the facts that we have, brain biology and gambling addiction, what that looks like. So it's all, evidence-based stuff, and we kind of share that, That being said, so when someone's drinking or using drugs, or they're on a slot machine and they're winning, or the same dopamine floods the brain the same way it is with like cocaine or similar substances. So the same changes are taking place in the brain. So that's another thing with gambling. There's, as I mentioned, the similarities and the differences. So if someone's doing drugs or drinking, you do that drug or drink that liquor, what's going to happen. What's going to happen. You're going to get drunk. You're going to get high. You might pass out. Gambling, you don't know what's going to happen. So even if you win, you get that rush, but that near win has the same impact on the brain as if it was a win. So that intermittent reward, it really it's difficult to break that cycle. It's even more difficult, I think, in some cases than substance use. And I've heard people that shared their stories in treatment and talk about how they would scratch lottery tickets and do cocaine at the same time, and it was so much better when they were scratching the lottery tickets when they were doing their cocaine. It was just, the high was so intense from it. So, we definitely see the impact on the brain, how it impacts the brain, and you're not even taking in a substance. So, yeah, it can go on for many years without a loved one knowing. I think there's some looking for identifiers for problem gambling. Preoccupation with it, with gambling, borrowing money, financial problems, and oftentimes folks come into other programs and they could have all these certain problems and they could be related to substance abuse, but are they? They could be gambling too. So I think it's the education and awareness. People should educate themselves, especially that work in the field of substance abuse, on problem gambling. We do that. But again, if you're going to gamble, I'm not anti-gambling or anything like that. Is keep it safe. Limit your, have a budget, like entertainment. Like if you're going to go out to dinner or go to a movie, you have your budget, your entertainment budget. You kind of just plan on spending a certain amount and sticking with that, And if you win, leave with your winnings. Don't stick around and try to win more. Just stick to your budget. And, most people can do it safely, but there's that small percent of the population that can't do it, like 1 to 3%. So